Hello and welcome to this week's edition of South Coast End Zone. I'm Tim Weisberg.
I'm Laurie Loss.
And we are here to talk with you about all the South Coast High School football action coming up. What is week 6 now already?
Yes, week 6.
Wow, time flies. We're already into October and the action's heating up, that's for sure.
Yeah, only 3 more weeks left in the regular season.
Really?
Yes.
Well.
It's an exciting time for teams trying to make the playoffs.
It definitely is. We have a lot of teams that are trying to, too. And some that are, just making some strides.
Yep, improvements.
We don't have any winless teams left, right?
No, everyone has a win.
Yeah, there we go. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. Yeah. I was like, let's see, all these teams will get a win or Patriots will get a loss, and then it just happens to all happen on the same weekend. All right, well, we want to remind everybody that you can follow along with us on Twitter at SC_varsity. You can also like us on Facebook, southcoastvarsity.com on Facebook, and we're now vining.
Yes, and it was awesome. I was vining at both the Voc Tech Dighton Rehoboth game and the Old Colony Upper Cape game. And at the Voc Tech game, I actually got the last play, which was like a sack that ended the game. So that was pretty awesome. I was in the right spot at the right time. So
there you have it. If you are a viner, then you can follow us and you can share your vines with us, and we can revine them. Is that how it's?
I think it's called. Yeah, it's called revining. Yeah.
I don't know. I just know that that's all I do on Vine is just revine people's.
All
videos.
I know is the 5 seconds goes by way too quick. I'm like, I press the thing and I'm like, oh, it's already over. Like, what do I do?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to get you a Batman mask, and then you can be like, Bat Dad. Have you seen those Vines?
Yes.
You can be like Bat Sports Reporter. You can be like, nice sack. All right. Anyway, why don't you get us started off this week with your first and goal?
Okay, on first down, not only did Sean Aldrich rush for 154 yards, he scored on a 56-yard touchdown run, but it wasn't enough as Voc Tech lost to DR. Second down, freshman Brendan Costa threw 2 touchdown passes in the first half to keep New Bedford close before Barnstable blew the game open before halftime. Third down, Connor Tavares carried the ball 20 times for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns in Dartmouth's lopsided win over Durfee. Fourth down, Mike Labonte scored on runs of 1 and 15 yards to power Wareham past Case for the Vikings' first win of the season. And the player of the week getting in the end zone, Kevin Albino, recorded 134 yards on 19 carries and scored 2 touchdowns, including the game winner, as Fairhaven rallied to beat Bourne 28-22 for the Blue Devils' first win of the year.
All right, so we've got everybody in the win column now, and now it's just a matter of, can teams like Wareham and Fairhaven continue to improve while some of these other teams are trying to compete? And with the new format this year, it's kind of like all bets are off. Who knows what can happen in these next couple of weeks?
Yeah, and every game is just so important. Depending on, if you're trying to have a top finish in the conference, or if, depending on your conference, if it's based on your points, which a lot of our conferences are based on the points. Mm-hmm. So, if you beat a team that's in a tougher division, you get even more points. So it'll be interesting to see how everything kind of shakes out in the next couple weeks. And I think the last regular season games are I think it's October 25th, October 26th that weekend. So then we'll be right into the playoffs.
All right. And let's get right into this week's games. We have a bunch of Friday games and a couple Saturday games this week. We'll start off with Old Rochester at Dighton Rehoboth, 7 p.m. on Friday. And this is a pretty huge game.
Yeah, I was at the Dighton Rehoboth Voc Tech game this past weekend, and as I left the press box for my traditional going over to the concession stand to get a hot chocolate, and there not being any hot chocolate, I saw Henry Quinlan, the Old Rochester coach, so I ended up chit-chatting with him for a few minutes. And they had a bye week this week. So, they opened the season 4-0. The last game that they played was against Voc Tech two weeks ago. And in that game, Richie Phillips had a breakthrough game. He had, 4 touchdowns. I think it was close to 150 rushing yards. But they just have such a solid, rushing attack with Nolan Bergeron, Raekwon Phillips, Colin Napton, and Richie Phillips. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of match up with Dighton Rehoboth, a team that for the last season or season and a half has been more of a passing team. It didn't look that way last week against Voc Tech. They mostly, tried to run the ball against the Bears. but they do have a strong quarterback in Nathan Kowalski. But last week it was Kyle Rose and Norman Manchester. Those two guys got it down on the ground. They had 163 combined rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So this is a Dayton Rehoboth team that's 4-1 overall, 3-1 in the South Coast Conference. Old Rochester's 4-0, 3-0 in the South Coast Conference. This is going to be one of those games that if Thanksgiving time, Old Rochester wants to be competing for against Apponequet for the South Coast Conference title, they have to beat DR. Bottom line.
And can they do it? I mean, the Falcons have looked beatable this year. Apponequet took care of them earlier in the season. So if any time was a chance for them to get them, this would be the year, I think.
And I mean, and the biggest edge I feel like Dayton Rehoboth has going into this game is being at home. I mean, it is tricky to go to Dayton and to play there. Their field's way behind the high school. It's kind of a wooded area. It is kind of a home field advantage for the Falcons.
You're busy looking over your shoulder to see if anybody's coming out of the woods with a chainsaw.
Making sure there's no mosquitoes. At this point, I think all the mosquitoes are gone. But and then the other thing. Sure. Is the break. How did that affect Old Rochester? Mm-hmm. Did some of their kids, I know Raekwon had hurt, I think it was his ankle we had hurt, or his foot, or his shin. Is he, how is he feeling? Did the break do, Old Rochester justice, or, did it just kind of, give them a week off in between,
Did it cool off?
Yeah, did they cool off kind of thing? Right. So, guess we'll find out Friday night.
Absolutely. Friday night at 7 o'clock, Old Rochester at Dayton Rehoboth.
And if that game is pushed back to 4, we will let you know. I know Dave Driscoll after the game this past Friday said he was hoping that it would be 7 o'clock Friday night. So we will definitely let you know if it's 7 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the paper and on Twitter. Yeah.
All right, our next game is, speaking of Apponequet, they are back after a week off too.
Yep.
SouthCoast at Apponequet, 7 p.m. And this should be a way for Apponequet to get back into the win column here. Yep.
Well, I know, the last time Apponequet played, they lost. They suffered their first loss of the season. It was to Dartmouth a couple weeks ago. It was a non-league game. They were playing, up, to a higher division. And really in that game, Apponequet had the lead. I think they were up 14-0, and then, Dartmouth came back. They made a couple changes because they had an injury, and, Apponequet just couldn't stop their passing attack. Dartmouth went from a run-minded team to a passing team, and, Apponequet had trouble, but they had opportunities. They had a lot of penalties in that game. I think it was like every single key play in the second half, there was an Apponequet penalty either, on offense or on defense. And I'm sure Coach Lomp has, had the guys working.
It's not really typical of them either.
No, it's not at all. And I mean, they've gotten off to this 3-1 start, mostly from the rushing attack. They have Weston Cohen, Matt Michael, Troy Nanfelt, and Cam Costa. Those 4 guys, they've combined for 756 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns in those 4 games. They don't have a passing touchdown yet this season, which is fine. I talked to Lomp after, I think going into the Dartmouth game, he's like, I'd rather, at that time they were 3-0, he's like, I'd rather be 3-0 and have no passing touchdowns than a team that has a couple losses, and, I can say, we have 2 or 3, passing touchdowns. But they'll face a SouthCoast team that seems to be much improved. The Warriors, they're 3-1 this season. They're also coming off a bye too, but they had back-to-back lopsided wins over Wareham and Fairhaven in back-to-back weeks leading up to that bye. And SouthCoast has scored 40 or more points 3 times this season. So it'll be interesting to see if SouthCoast's offense can do that against Apponequet's defense that I think really until the Dartmouth game hadn't given up a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess no.
No. So. And really, they've gotten the job done through the air and on the ground. They have 13 passing touchdowns and 7 rushing this season, SouthCoast. And Brendan Smith has 7 of those TDs through the air, while Nick Lanciletti, I hope I'm saying that right, has 6. So they have 2 different guys that are, kind of switching in and out at quarterback, and they're both getting the job done. So we'll see how they match up against Apponequet's defense. And it's a home game for Apponequet. We're hoping 7 o'clock. I think it's 7 o'clock. We got an email today, so.
Definitely 7 o'clock in Lakeville. SouthCoast at Apponequet. Our next game is also 7 o'clock. Wareham at Fairhaven. And before last Friday, this could have been one of those something's going to give games. Yep. Because both teams were looking for their first win. Now they both got it out of the way.
Yep.
And now they can focus on just getting back to work and actually improving themselves as a team.
And both teams had to rally to win last week. They both had to kind of face that adversity. They both were down. I mean, I think Fairhaven started that game off with the lead. Where Bourne came back and took the lead, and it was kind of like a fourth quarter. I think they ended up scoring a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter, to actually win the game. Cam Charette came up huge. He had the go-ahead touchdown. It was on a drive where Kevin Albino, I think, had 44 rushing yards, got him down the field. Cam punched in from 1 yard out. And really, it's kind of been who's going to step up besides Charette? Every week I feel like for Fairhaven it was kind of like, all right, we see, Cam has a touchdown or 2 touchdowns, and, who's going to be that second guy? And really Kevin stood up this last week and said, hey, put the team on my shoulders and I'll get you down there. And they were able to score. And Wareham rallied, against Case last week.
2 fourth quarter scores?
It was three fourth quarter scores. Quarterback Mike Labonte, he had a huge game. Like I said, he had 15 carries, 83 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. Owen Braley was also big. He had 97 rushing yards. He didn't score, he didn't score, but he still had close to 100 yards. And the other Wareham touchdown came on a pick 6 by Austin Costa in the fourth quarter. And it just seemed like I was following Twitter because Brendan was at, our new reporter, he was at the game and he was tweeting. I'm following him. I'm like, oh, Wareham's going to lose. And then I started following in the fourth quarter, and I'm like, oh, okay, and all of a sudden just looked like they were down, and then they had the lead, and then all of a sudden they're up by 2 touchdowns, and it turned so quickly, and it was so good to see that they were able to get that momentum shift. And
I think that's key for both teams, for both Wareham and Fairhaven, because they've had struggles during the season where they've kind of given things away at times, and this way here it'll show them that no matter what point in the game it is, they can't feel like they're down, which is an important lesson to learn for young teams.
Yeah, and you can still come back. That's the whole thing, is it's not over until it's over. And I think that even played a little bit in the Voc Tech game that I was at, Voc Tech DR, and really until that final, sack at the end, they could have won that game. They were only down by 5, and they had the ball. I think it was inside the 30-yard line for DR, and it just a couple plays. So that's the one good thing about high school football. It's like things can change so quickly that unless you're down by 4 touchdowns or something, you usually have a shot.
All right. So that is Wareham at Fairhaven, 7 p.m. on Friday, and also on Friday, but this one at 4 p.m. will be Greater New Bedford Voc Tech at Case. And you had mentioned Voc Tech almost beating DR, being right in there against the Falcons last week, and should be a lot easier this week against Case, I would think. Yeah,
and going into the game last week, Coach Chuck Allaire had said to me, I feel like we're not, like, nobody thinks we're good, I feel like we're we don't have the respect, and I feel like the way that they played against Dayton Rehoboth last week, really to push it to the end. Also, they had DR had the ball inside the 5-yard line. And they were about to score, and Voc Tech's defense, stood its ground. They forced him into a field goal. The kid, missed the field goal. I think it was partially blocked. And then that set up that drive. Even though it wasn't a game-winning drive, it gave them the opportunity, to win the game. And they really kind of showed, hey, we may not have won the game, but we can play with the Dayton Rehoboths and, as we're talking about the top teams in the conference. And we also have to remember Voc is in that B division.
Yeah.
So to say I'm competing with, one of the top teams in the A division, that's a pretty big deal. But like you said, Case is coming into this game, coming off the loss to Wareham. The Cardinals are 0-5. They've been outscored, I think it was,
2,000 to 3.
It was 180 to 60 in their first five games this season. Philip Pyers had a hand in both of their touchdowns last week. He threw a touchdown, and he also ran from 2 yards out. But Case is just, it's a down year. It typically is a down,
Yeah, they have a lot of years like that.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to get any easier for Case this week. And for Voc Tech, they're focused. They're focused on beating Case, beating Bourne, and making the playoffs. Right. And that's what they have to do to make the playoffs. And as I said in the first and goal, it's Sean Aldridge did an awesome job this past week, and so did Nick Richard, their quarterback. He had a rushing touchdown. I think it was for 22 yards, right through the heart of DR's defense. In that second half, and they had a couple turnovers. I think they had two fumbles and an interception. and they lose by only 5. So, I mean, they were right there. So I expect Voc Tech to bounce back this week against Case.
All right, that is Voc Tech at Case, 4 p.m. on Friday, back to 7 o'clock on Friday. Bridgewater Raynham at Dartmouth, and this is going to be a really big game because Bridgewater Raynham is one of the better teams around, and this is an OCL game.
Yep. And I mean, this is the OCL opener for both teams, and it's been not a while, but it has been a few years since Dartmouth was kind of like, oh, all right, can we, we keep competing for the title. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when they started off. Yeah, and I mean, getting a win over Bridgewater Raynham for Dartmouth, it would be an upset. It would be, but it would be a huge upset. Like I said a few weeks ago, Bridgewater Raynham opened the season with wins over St. John's Prep and also with a win over Duxbury, knocking off the top 2 teams in the state. They beat New Bedford 2 weeks ago. They're actually coming in off a bye, Bridgewater Raynham, coming into this game. And so the last time they played was against New Bedford. And Brennan Gallagher had a huge game. I think he had 230 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. He's got 5 touchdowns on the season. He's kind of the main guy that Dartmouth's going to have to stop. And it's interesting for the Indians. They started the season off, they're 3-1. They opened against Sting, then they had the loss at Attleboro, and now they've kind of rolled. They rallied to beat Apponequet. They rolled last week, and they've had to switch things up. With Chris Martin, he has a high ankle sprain, so we don't know how long he's going to be out. He was their top running back the first couple weeks of the season. Now Connor Tavares has come right in and just taken over. And also they've switched quarterbacks. They've gone from Bo Parlin now that I finally can pronounce the kid's name, to Blaine Almeida. And, it's a completely different offense. They're throwing a lot more with Blaine, and Timmy Smith is getting more involved, playing tight end. And it's kind of opening things up for Dartmouth because, if something isn't, if your top running back, is gone, and that's, you have a certain style that you run with him, kind of an option, then, you get your other quarterback in there that can throw the ball, and let's spread it out, and, maybe they'll have some big plays against Bridgewater Raynham. But this is going to be, if you're going to be in the area, this is going to be an exciting game to go to on Friday night. It's the top games would be this one, and then the Old Rochester Dighton Rehoboth game. Those are the 2 big games of the Friday night. So
when Devin McCourty tweets out that he's looking for a game to go to on Friday night, this is the one that we send him to.
Yes.
So that's Bridgewater Raynham at Dartmouth, 7 p.m. on Friday. Also 7 p.m. on Friday. I feel like we should have had Ed Collins come in to talk about this because he's had this game circled on his calendar all season. New Bedford at Barrington, Rhode Island.
Well, Ed, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Ed's not a huge fan of covering high school football.
No.
It's not his favorite thing to do. And last Friday or Saturday night, Ed said to me, Laurie, I want to cover this game. I'm like, are you feeling okay? Are you sick? Like, what's going on here? Like, is this a joke? Because Ed usually doesn't offer to cover high school football. But, this should be a pretty good one. New Bedford, they dropped their 3rd loss of the season this past week to Barnstable. They hung tough in that game. I think it was tied at one point, 14-14, and then Barnstable scored a couple touchdowns right before halftime. Brendan Costa threw 2 touchdown passes. So, he's starting to, I know that game against Bridgewater Raynham, he struggled a little bit. This past game, he came up big. And I think he had 167 passing yards, but they only had 46 rushing yards as a team. And you're going to need more than that, especially when you're coming up against Barnstable. And I think one of Barnstable's touchdowns came on a turnover. So a lot of things kind of went against New Bedford in that game. And Barrington, I had to do a little research, because I'm not too familiar with Barrington. They're in Rhode Island. They've started the season 4-0. They beat their first 4 opponents 139-71.
Wow.
And they've scored 35 or more points 3 times this year. So, and then in last week's win over East Providence, John Martin scored 3 touchdowns while James Murphy had 2. They jumped out to a 28-0 halftime lead and just cruised. I think it was 42-21. So, they're a Division I team, Barrington. I mean, this should see, like, if anything, this would we would get to see how Massachusetts teams rack up against Rhode Island teams. You know what I mean?
Like
the competition.
Rhode Island teams, yes.
Well, you know what I mean. It's like
stoking the
you
fires.
You gotta kind of see. We've seen how New Bedford's kind of gone up against Bridgewater Raynham, Barnstable. Some of these tough teams in the area here. Let's see how they go up against a tough team. One of the top teams in Massachusetts or in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
Barrington. So if you want to make the ride, if you don't mind going for a little ride, I think
I don't think it's that far.
What is it? You go down 195, 24, and it's somewhere around Newport.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So it's not too far.
I don't know Rhode Island geography. Everything I know about Rhode Island, I learned from Family Guy.
Just come to the Standard Times and just follow Ed.
Yeah, Ed will be glad to lead you in.
Or maybe you can even carpool with Ed.
New Bedford at Barrington, Rhode Island, 7 p.m. on Friday. Saturday's game, so we have a couple games here. One is at 11 a.m. Old Colony at South Shore Regional Vocational School, and Old Colony, they've been kind of up and down a little bit this year. They have that big game against West Bridgewater, and then they fall to Upper Cape.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I said this last week, but this past weekend was the first time I've covered an Old Colony football game in my whole time here at the Standard Times.
Really?
It was very exciting. They
had banners, welcome Laurie.
It was close to that. But no, I mean, it was great atmosphere. It was beautiful day. It looked like it was going to rain. It ended up holding off. Press box was open. I didn't know Matt Trahan was the one that actually calls the game, so I got to chit chat with him a little bit in the press box. And Old Colony gave a strong effort. They fought from beginning to end, but they just couldn't stop these kids from Upper Cape. There's this kid Derby and Dumont, and they had over 300 yards rushing between the two and 6 touchdowns. I think all 6 of the touchdown drives were under 2 minutes. So it was just, they had trouble tackling the kids, pulling them down, and these kids, once they got in the open field, no one was catching them. So it was a tough week for Old Colony. I know Jake Pringle did have a solid game. I feel like we're always saying, even in the losses, Jake's always strong. He had 2 touchdown passes in the game, and Ryan Ferris also had a rushing touchdown. But it was like Upper Cape. It would almost look like it was like like they say a track meet. That's what it felt like. And every time I would finish writing something down, I'd look up and I'd be like, oh, another big play for Upper Cape. So Old Colony this week is going to really try and probably work on tackling in practice. I hate to say go back to the basics, but you got to be able to tackle. And then also on offense, they have such great passing attack, but you throw a ball, next thing you know it's 2nd and 10. Sometimes your passing game can come back to hurt you if you're not completing passes.
Right.
And they're actually playing a South Shore team that got their lone win against Holbrook 2 weeks ago. So this is a team that's 1-3, 1-1 also on the Mayflower Small. So it's a team I think that they can really compete with. And then their 3 losses this year, South Shore has only scored 28 combined points. So this is a team that's not used to putting up points on the board, where Old Colony can.
Yeah, they have shown that, yeah.
And when I was in the press box at the Old Colony game, there was some Upper Cape coaches, calling it, kind of standing near me calling, and they were just so worried that, Old Colony was going to score on every drive, and, they were hoping to be able to, keep up with Old Colony in that game. So I think people are starting to realize, hey, this, the Cougars are a serious team, and pretty much anytime they have the ball, they can score.
So that'll be Old Colony at South Shore. That'll be at 11 a.m. on Saturday. And then 1 o'clock on Saturday, Bishop Stang at Coyle Cassidy. And the Spartans had a tough loss last week in the EAC opener for them, was it?
Yes, EAC opener against Martha's Vineyard. Buddy got a game back up on me now because I picked Bishop Stang to win the game. He picked Martha's Vineyard. And I was asking, Bill was at the game, so I was saying, Bill, text me the scores. Text me the scores, and it's 0-0, 0-0. It's another one of these games that went to overtime, scoreless. Anybody's game. The Bishop Stang came out. Matt Golden, scored. I think it was a 4-yard run. They got the ball first. They missed the 2-point conversion, and then Martha's Vineyard comes out. They end up scoring. They get the 2-point conversion. Game's over. They lose. For the last 5 years, every single time they played each other, it's come down to the 4th quarter or this past week, overtime. It's always close between those 2 teams. But I think you just have to look at Bishop Stang's defense. In the last 2 games, they haven't given up a touchdown in regulation. That's impressive. The only problem is the offense hasn't scored in regulation the last 2 weeks either. So it's kind of, you can take the good with the bad. The defense is playing outstanding, but then the offense just can't seem to finish. That's kind of the problem. And we'll see how they do this week against the winless Warriors of Coyle Cassidy. They lost their first 5 games this year by a combined 147-50. So they're not scoring a lot, but they're giving up a lot of points. And last week, Coyle lost to Bishop Feehan. It was 27-13. So they did end up scoring against Feehan. And Tristan Blaisdell, he ran for a touchdown against Feehan, and he threw for a touchdown. And it seems like he's kind of been their focal point of their offense the last few weeks. So, Bishop Stang's defense will have to, clamp down on him, and hopefully the offense. I think the biggest thing is getting that offense going. Maybe having a quick break early or, getting a big play or something, to kind of get going.
Well, this one's a 1 o'clock game, so if it has to go to overtime, at least
there'll be plenty of time.
Deadline.
Yes.
Which we're like, it's a 6 o'clock game. It should be over nice and early. What overtime?
Yep.
All right, so that is Bishop Stang at Coyle Cassidy, 1 p.m. on Saturday. We'll run down all the games again. On Friday, the first game will be Greater New Bedford Voc Tech at Case at 4 p.m. And then 7 o'clock starts for Old Rochester at Dighton Rehoboth, Seekonk at Apponequet, Wareham at Fairhaven, Bridgewater Raynham at Dartmouth, and New Bedford at Barrington, Rhode Island. And then on Saturday, Old Colony at South Shore at 11, and Bishop Stang at Coyle at 1 p.m. So that does it for this week's show. Anything else you want to add in?
I tried to have hot chocolate twice this past weekend at both Old Colony, which it was a little warm out during the day there, and also at Voc Tech, and they were sold out at halftime. This week I think I'm going to the Wareham at Fairhaven game. So save me a cup of hot coffee at halftime, please, whoever's doing the concession stand, so I can start doing my reports. I think somebody's coined me as the hot chocolate queen or something. I don't know.
The regular season's almost over.
I know. I haven't had any. I'm sure once the playoffs start and it's going to be freezing out there, I'll be having multiple cups of hot chocolate every week.
So every stand around here now has like at least one packet of Swiss Miss under the counter.
I know. Maybe I should bring my own packet.
A bottle of lukewarm tap water, and they're like, here you go.
Here you go, Laurie.
We'd rather have you say that it's bad than say that it's not here at all. All right, so you can follow us on Twitter at SC_varsity. Like us on Facebook, SouthCoastVarsity.com on Facebook. Follow us on Vine. I was Instagramming this weekend.
Nice.
I sent out quite a few pictures. By quite a few, I mean 3. But still, that's good for me.
Yeah.
So maybe the Instagram will have to come soon too.
Yep.
So there you have it. That does it for this week's show. Until next week, we will see you under the lights.
And in the end zone.